Hey, in this video today I'm going to compare the Ted movies to the Paul Blart Mall Cop movies. In each case there's only two of them. I first watched Ted actually, along with Paul Blart Mall Cop, with friends of mine back when I lived in New York, so these both are nostalgic for me. When it comes to the highest Rotten Tomatoes score for each franchise, in the case of Ted, that first movie has the highest score of 69%. With Paul Blart Mall Cop, that first film has the highest score of only a 34%. I can't say that I personally agree with that. I don't, because I've always found that movie to be pretty funny. I think it should be fresh from Rotten Tomatoes. But admittedly, humor is subjective. People have different taste. Ted is actually a great example of that because for some people it's certainly really funny, but I've never actually enjoyed Ted that much. It's just too cynical for my taste, and I'll get into that more in just a bit. But Ted wins the first round. Then when you look at the lowest Rotten Tomatoes score for each franchise, with Paul Blart Mall Cop, that second movie only has a 6% on Rotten Tomatoes. Yikes, that's not the same at all as saying, oh, this movie's a 59%. So, okay, technically it's not fresh, but it's almost fresh. That's not too bad. 6% is a terrible score. Now, Ted 2, it has a score of 44%, which obviously is still bad, but it's not as bad as 6%, so Ted wins again. Then when you look at the average score, you can tell by now Ted wins again because it has an average of 51, whereas Paul Blart Mall Cop has an average of 20. Then when you look at gap between lowest and highest score, in the case of Ted, you have a gap of 25 between the two different scores. In the case of Paul Blart Mall Cop, you have a gap of 28 between the two scores. Gap's a bit lower for Ted, so it wins again, meaning Ted is actually going to win this debate regardless of my personal opinion. And this is interesting because, on the one hand, I haven't seen Ted 2 and I'm not really a big fan of Ted. In the case of Paul Blart Mall Cop, I like that first movie. I think it's a really interesting premise. You have this guy, Paul Blart, who really wants to be a state trooper, but unfortunately, he has what's it called? He has this condition where he needs sugar, otherwise he passes out. So as we see at the beginning of the movie, because of that, he keeps failing the test to become a state trooper, and also he's a grown man, but he's still living with his mom. He's pretty clearly not actually happy with his life. You can tell that he's working as a mall cop. The other people who are working at the mall don't really take him seriously. They see him as a loser, as a big joke. And then you get to the end of the movie and this whole group of criminals takes over the mall, and then we learn that this SWAT guy who should be against these criminals is actually working with the criminals. It's actually Paul Blart, the guy who's seen by other people as just a pathetic loser. He's the one who actually ends up saving the day. When he gets to the end of the movie, he actually shows himself to be competent when he actually takes out all these criminals so they're not in charge of the mall anymore. I like the character of Paul Blart. He's likable, I'd say, because you can tell that he means well, but in some ways he's not all that smart. And then when it comes to this lady that he definitely likes, by the end of the movie he actually gets her birthday card. It's like, oh, that's really sweet. He cares about her. So you can tell that he has good intentions, but he certainly sometimes does things wrong, sometimes inadvertently, like when he ends up actually accidentally having alcohol at this party, well, at this social gathering, really, at a restaurant. He has what he thinks is lemonade, but it turns out it's actually alcohol. So because of that, he starts acting like a big doofus. So he basically embarrasses himself in front of everyone there, including this girl that he likes. In the case of Paul Blart Mall Cop 2, I find that movie really off-putting, to be honest, because right away in the movie, we learn that, oh, Paul's mother and his girlfriend, they're just dead. That's it. They're just dead. And why exactly? Just because we want to be cynical and mean-spirited for the sake of being cynical and mean-spirited. What? Guys, what are we doing here? You ended the last movie with Paul getting together with his girlfriend. It was a happy note to end the movie on. Like, yes, Paul is actually in a better place now. He has a better life. He's happier. Then you kick off the next movie. Oh, things are just sad for him. We're just piling tragedy on top of tragedy for Paul. And why? Well, not actually for any good reason. We're just being cynical for the sake of being cynical. Oh, these characters are just dead right away. No fanfare, no ceremony. They're just gone. I really, really don't like that. In the case of Ted, with the first movie, you have this bear coming to life, and at first it's like, yes, we have this bear that's alive and he's sweet, but then the joke is that, oh, Ted grows up to be dirty, raunchy, crass, cynical, jaded. So you have this bear that's innocent at first, and then we see, oh, this has been going on for so long that Bear Ted is not innocent anymore whatsoever. You hard cut from this bear being interviewed by these people, and it's really sweet, to the bear doing drugs. We see throughout the movie Ted is such an unlikable character. I just find him insufferable. We see on a personality level, it's not just this guy's cynical and jaded, which he is. He's mean, rude, abrasive, combative. And then in the case of our main human character, I'm watching the movie being like, I don't like you, guy. I'm finding you to be a pathetic loser. You're a man-child. Hey, this girl who's engaged to him, how about you dump him and move on to someone better? Because he's a grown man, and yet he is so fixated on this bear Ted. It's pretty sad. And so I just find Ted to be a movie that's too jaded, too mean-spirited for my taste. I don't find it to be enjoyable. And then Ted 2 wasn't even reviewed as well as the first film. So I'm like, no, I'm not going to watch it. It just doesn't interest me. So which franchise do I prefer? In both cases, you have a second movie that wasn't received anywhere near as well as the first film. I would definitely say I would choose Paul Blart Mall Cop, because I like Paul Blart Mall Cop more than Ted. And so that'll be it for this video.